This is Hannah Zuberi, and I'm your host on Justice for All Now. You're watching us on America's only Muslim-focused TV channel. Today, we're going to be talking about a topic that is very close to my heart. Remember, almost a decade ago, I wrote an article about street harassment and received a lot of backlash on this. It could be a touch, a feel, a whisper. It doesn't take much to make a young girl feel dirty, stripped of her dignity. Walking down the streets in many countries in the world, young women are constantly faced with street harassment. Going to the market may just turn out to be one of the worst experiences of your life. I remember as a young woman, a young girl, getting my ears pierced and being molested right there in the on the jewelry counter while my aunt sat right next to me. I remember at 15, we were at Umrah in the holiest city in the world and right in front of the Kaaba. And I couldn't believe what I was experiencing. My father was right next to me. I was in full abaya and hijab. Then at 16, I had had enough. My yearly trip to Pakistan to visit my grandparents, to celebrate Eid came with a big price. And I didn't want to go out to the market, get, clothes and jewelry because I knew that something would happen. And it did. And I remember that was the first time I turned around and slapped the person. I don't care who it was, even if it was the perpetrator or not. I just had enough. Decades later, when I took my own daughters to Pakistan, I was guarding them like a hawk. I made sure that I talked about things that I hadn't been talked about when I was a young woman. And I made sure that they understood that they should yell and scream, God forbid anybody came near them. So, and honestly, this could be your child, your daughter, my daughter. So today, if we look at statistics from these countries, from countries around the world, and street harassment is not a Muslim specific problem, it's not an Eastern problem or a Western problem, all around the world. Gallup data from surveys in 143 countries in 2011 showed that in those countries, including Italy, France, Australia, and the US, men are considerably more likely than women to say that they feel safe walking at night in their communities. The results of the Gallup poll annual crime survey conducted in 2014 found that 37% of US adults say that they would not feel safe walking alone near their homes at night. By gender, 45% of them were women who said they did not feel safe walking alone at night, compared to 27% of men. But in Pakistan, where we're going to be talking to two young, bright entrepreneurs, tech developers, in Pakistan, in a study of more than 200 youth in the city of Gujranwala, Pakistan, 96% of the girls experienced street harassment. Now, this is a major global problem. And we have with us Haya and Maryam, who run Aga, which means mindful in the Urdu language. It's an initiative that takes innovative steps in countering street harassment in Pakistan. Welcome so much to the show, Haya. Haya Ansari is the team lead and co-founder of Aga. She's a passionate entrepreneur with a background in engineering. And Maryam Zubair Butt is the research lead and co-founder. Maryam has a master's degree in engineering systems, and she has several publications in collaboration with Harvard and MIT researchers relating to technologically sensed social and behavioral factors to understand public health. Thank you so much, the both of you, for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Alhamdulillah. So tell me a little bit more about yourselves. I know I read a little bit about your short bios, but I'd love to learn more about the both of you. Currently, where are you located, and what, aside from Aga, what keeps you busy?
So I am currently in Qatar. but we often visit Pakistan and specifically Islamabad.
Mhm.
And uh, like you said in the bio, I'm quite passionate about technology. And I decided when I was in 10th grade that I want to be an engineer and I want to be an entrepreneur. I just didn't know that those are the terms you're supposed to use. That I learned over time. But the passion for that has always been there. And in fact, I know Miriam back since then, since the time I was in school. And even our earliest conversations were about climate change, and
Mhm.
we used to be in the same bus to use the same bus to go to school. And I remember I used to discuss with her how we can fix the ozone layer. This was
Mhm.
back when we were what? I was 13. So that passion has always been there, and it has followed me throughout my life. You asked about my life other than Aga, and I'm married. I have two kids, and we are trying to live in the post-COVID world the best we can, making the most of our situation.
Excellent. Mariam, we'd love to hear from you.
Yes, Assalamu alaikum. And thank you so much, Sister Hina, for having us here. So, I'm the research lead and co founder of ADA with the Haya. And basically, my interest had been in the social implications of technology. So, my research journey started when I was doing my master's, and I got a chance to work with the researchers from renowned institutions. So that's how my research journey started. And right now, I am like trying to understand, and I try to constantly learn and improve myself into this field of data science. And I'm also a mother of two lovely children who keep me busy apart from my passion for learning and pursuing my passion.
Excellent. I love it. So tell me, what problem did you all see, and was there any specific incident that led you to develop what is now Alga?
Okay, so the idea developed when both of us were working on, like Mariam said, we're both aspiring data scientists. And again, there was a fascination with artificial intelligence and how we could use that in social situations and social problems, because I think almost every industry in the world has now been implicated by artificial intelligence, and yet we don't apply this extremely powerful tool to solve our social situations.
Mhm.
So that was a gap that we thought that, okay, here's something that we can do. And when I thought of social situations, which situation came to mind that was most experienced by not just me? The moment I speak to another woman about street harassment, you don't even have to explain, you don't have to give any statistics. It's just a lived reality for us, right? So we thought, okay, we have this m- monumentous problem, and no one, it's not that no one is willing to do anything about it, no one even knows what to do about it.
Mhm.
So considering that we are women who have, like you, faced street harassment, I've faced severe cases of street harassment, and considering that we're both engineers and have this technical background, we thought we can actually create a solution for this. And the idea, I'm not going to say that there was this one genius moment where we came up with the idea. No, we did our research. We had endless discussions, long night discussions over over different ideas of how we can come up with something that would actually be effective,
Mhm.
right? We did our research on what has been done on this problem across the world, and we found that coincidentally, just 10 years ago is when people started working on this. I found that
Mhm.
interesting because you mentioned your article came out 10 years ago. That is when you start really seeing organizations get into the problem and the public acknowledging that street harassment even exists. So we went back, but unfortunately, we couldn't uncover much data because it's such an underdeveloped problem.
Mhm.
So there you go. We had the skills, we had the experience, and we had an idea of how we can solve this. And that's where this started.
Yeah. So, yeah, I would like to add. So, one thing which also made me think over this problem as really a big obstacle in girls or women being, empowered or coming out and using their talents was because my father, he owns a technical school in Pakistan, back in Pakistan, where he provides free training in tailoring and sewing for girls. So, and one of the biggest problems girls had was even if they live a street across,
Mhm.
they wouldn't come to the training center without a male chaperone. I mean, so if nobody was at home that day, if nobody could drop them just the street across, their families wouldn't allow them to go alone. So, I mean, if you just think about it, I mean, to the level of, I mean, the restriction this problem is giving them on a daily basis just to learn a simple skill as tailoring. They're not able to go to that institution where it's being provided. So this is something. I mean, it's everywhere, and it is something we don't acknowledge unless we see it in its worst form. So, and I see that because it's everywhere, but still we go like, we've just accepted it as part of our society. So we are expected to just, I mean, bear with it or just live with it. I mean, and work around, but not to solve it. I mean, we're not able to. We don't think of actually solving it. We talk about accepting it or ignoring it, but
Mm.
not solving it. So that's the whole idea, which me and Haya had long, long discussions about that. Okay, and then when we looked deeper, I mean, we realized it is a global problem, as you have, I mean, you listed a lot of stats on this problem. So this means this is a very, very deep-rooted problem. It's not about just Pakistan. It's not just about a Muslim country, or it's
Mhm.
not the Eastern problem. It's everywhere.
Def-
So that's how, yeah.
Definitely. Now tell us, and this is really, this is something that is very innovative. It's not just an awareness tool or an awareness blog, or, a lot of times you'll have people talk about just being able to talk about the issue. But you guys have actually put your heads together to come up with a solution. So tell me more about AGA. What does AGA do? What does the organization do? And then how or what does the tool do?
Okay. So Haya, you would like to introduce, or should I just?
Go ahead.
Yes. Okay. Okay. So that basically, as just to introduce it, that it's an initiative which aims at combating street harassment.
Mhm.
Currently, we are focusing on Pakistan. So let's start. What we ask you as a user or you as a victim of street harassment from you, we ask you to share with us your incident anonymously. I mean, because we acknowledge that the trauma of the incident and the social construct of the society, I mean, leads to people not being comfortable with sharing their identity. So if you see the share your incident page, we ask you details, some very basic information about yourself, which doesn't identify you.
Mhm.
And apart from this, if you go next, I mean, other details include where the incident happened, when it happened, and things like how you reacted during that incident, how the harasser responded to you, and what were the bystanders doing. I mean, how
Mm.
did they respond to this certain incident?
And
Nothing
that's really important. I'm
specific.
going to stop you,
Yeah, yeah,
Mariam, to point that out, because a lot of times for young women, it's very, very hard, or even young men now, when you are attacked or you are harassed on the streets, it's the people around you sometimes
yeah,
who trying to shush you up and say,
yeah.
don't say anything, or, nothing happened, just ignore it. Or if you do make a fuss, it's, you're the bad guy instead of the perpetrator. So
Yes,
that's really interesting. That so you're taking
exactly.
in also the
Completely.
data about the bystanders. Okay.
Yeah. So I absolutely agree with you, Dr. Sister Hina. So the next question comes, okay, if we are taking this information, what is Aga doing with this information? I mean, that's the question on everybody's mind. We are asking people to come and share their incident with us. So I would like to say that if I tell you that if we are able to mark all those public places where girls face most harassment on a map, if I can put, as we can see, if you can just scroll down, if we go down, if I am just so imagine this map, and then these marks actually represents cases of incidents of harassment.
Mhm.
So if we imagine that if you say 5,000, 10,000, imagine that number of reports. If we are able to display them on this map, the kind of information this map can give, and not just harassment, whether it was physical harassment, verbal harassment, non-verbal harassment, and even the times, whether
Mm.
it happened in the morning, afternoon, evening, night, all this information. We believe that this information can be really useful to women organizations, to authorities, or maybe even local supporters to
Mm.
actually go and patrol these areas, monitor these areas, and this will actually intimidate the harassers and lead to safer streets. So this is one main aspect of AGA, but there is more.
Mm.
One is the location aspect. When it comes to information such as how did the harasser respond to the victim's reaction and the bystanders, we're trying to find the best or the most effective way of responding at that situation.
Mm.
And the best ways and the role of bystanders. I mean, we want to confidently suggest that bystanders do have a role. And what can they do to make that situation, you can say, less detrimental for the victim? So maybe some kind of just coming and supporting the victim or consoling, maybe this would be a big step. And it is
Mm.
important to note that these suggestions or these solutions may vary from area to area. So a less privileged area, the psychology of a harasser in a less privileged area would be different from an area that is more privileged.
Mm.
So we are a major part of our research is also finding solutions of what can I as a victim do at that point? What can I as a bystander do at that point? And then even apart from this, so this is the research aspect. Apart from this, AGA is constantly trying to raise awareness on educating men, educating bystanders, or around victim support of not going around and blaming victims for when they
Mm.
come up and share incidents with you. And we also have a support group on our Facebook. We have a Facebook page, Facebook group dedicated to discussing taboos around street harassment.
Excellent.
So this, as a whole, places AGA. We're trying our best to deal with this problem holistically.
Mm.
So, we're not just trying to focus on just one location. Okay, we're saying this is one thing that could be done. Okay, well, let's go to another one. So we just trying constantly to improve and make our solution more robust. So we're also trying to reach organizations. Inshallah, we will be able to collaborate with organizations who actually use our results to effectively find solutions and practically on ground make a change. Inshallah.
Excellent. So according to your website, it mentions that there's a 5 solution fold. So what does that mean? Can you please explain and elaborate on those 5 solutions?
Mhm. I want to say that.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Okay. So, number one is our real-time maps, which I just talked about a few minutes ago, which is finding hotspots of harassment. And our maps are updated in real time, basically. So every hour, the map gets updated with each time a person submits an incident form with us. This is one. Then the number two is our research aspect of understanding with role of how can victims respond and role of bystanders. This is the second aspect of it. Then the third is the awareness aspect. So we are whatever existing research exists on this topic, we are trying to create posts on our social media platforms to raise awareness on this. And then number four is what was number four? Yes, number four is input to policy design. So
Okay.
the whole all of this is actually coming to for us to inform policymakers of what possible solutions can they come up with, and support with so victim support is also one of our
So that's part of the
yeah, yes, exactly,
solution.
exactly.
So,
If I miss something higher, you can add. Yeah. So
What's
what
it's just
has
different about
surprised you the most about the work so far? What were you expecting, and what has surprised you?
maybe just the kind of reports that we're getting, even
Mm,
though we are women, even though we have faced street harassment, even then, we're surprised by the prevalence of the problem and also just how serious it is. Um, I, I cannot read the reports for too long
mm,
because we have an aspect in the reports where you're supposed to describe the incident because we want to use natural language processing on the entire incident just to make sure that maybe we're not capturing some part of the story in our form.
mm,
But when you read those stories, there are uh, the heart can't tolerate them. And for me, that's just really surprising. Even being a woman, even having faced street harassment is surprising. I wanted to add though, I think Aga is built upon the seeds that were planted by awareness campaigns around 10 years ago. And you mentioned awareness as being a solution, and it was earlier in the day. But now we've come a step further. We know that the problem exists, and a lot of the youth doesn't need a convincing about this problem and how we need a solution. Um, Aga took it one step further by breaking down the problem and trying to understand where are the gaps in our understanding of the problem. This concept is not new. You do
mm,
it for all companies in all industries. You, in fact, get consultants and experts in who do a research on your company, and then they identify gaps for you, and they have markers and indicators, and to really understand how you can thrive as a company. We do that. This is normal. But when it comes to social problems, nobody seems to be interested anymore because, well, you're not going to make money off of it, basically.
mm,
So
mhm.
that is what Outcome tends to
But
do.
it does it, but there is a economical angle to this as well, because imagine if this is, for example, a mall, right? And that's where a lot of young women or people, doesn't have to be even young women, because even elderly get harassed at some point. So and you stop going there because of the harassment there. So that's bad for business too. So the losses, the economic losses that are occurring because of this, the amount of women who are not being able to work outside their homes because of this. So there's a definitely a not only a public health angle to this, but there's a business and economical angle to this as well.
Absolutely. If you think about the problem, like Mariam pointed out, if you think about the problem holistically, uh, then there is an economic cost to it. There is a social cost to it. Um, like I said, the problem is so deeply entrenched in society, and the repercussions are so serious. But it's difficult. This is what we're trying to do. This is why we don't call. We're trying to become an organization that has committed itself to research and to designing solutions, incorporating technology into the field of social sciences.
Mm.
So, uh, in short, we're trying to tackle a social problem using technology.
Technology. Now, and so someone wanted to fill out a form. It doesn't matter if it's not on the street when it says street harassment. Can several times we'll hear stories of how this has happened in schools, workplaces, and other public places.
Yes. So we are currently focusing on street harassment. So
Okay.
that means public places, which includes marketplaces and streets as such. Malls also come into public places as well, or some open spaces. But when it comes to workplace, we do understand that this happens. So what we're trying right now what we are thinking is, if somebody wants to share their harassment, rather than turning them away, we're trying to divert them to another set of questions,
Mm.
because our form is designed for street harassment.
Okay.
So yes, currently we are not.
So you see, when you're trying to solve a problem, the first thing you have to do is identify your problem,
Mm.
define it really. And only then can you actually design a solution for it. So we don't have a magic wand. I'd love to have it. Just wave it around and all the problems go away. But
Mhm.
one thing at a time. Our current form has, there's a lot of, it's a love of labor really.
Mm.
We've reiterated, gone over it, and really uh, polished it and designed it for public street harassment. Of course, there are so many other kinds of harassment that exist, and Aga's technology and platform can be used for those as well, but not today.
Mm.
Today, we are focused on street harassment, and once we have, let's say, perfected this model and actually proven, or this is a learning curve for us as well, because this is very new. I'm not aware if someone else is also working on this, but if you are and you're listening, please get in touch with us. We'd love to collaborate. But this is very new, and we really want this not to just be a page where you can fill out the form and then forget about it. We
Mm.
actually want this to somehow translate on the streets and see some kind of change. And until we've been through that process and we've refined it, we don't want to jump into every other problem.
Sure.
So we've kind of going through this funnel. We have a vision and we have a goal.
Mm.
And once we reach that goal, then we can come out the other side and kind of expand again and try to tackle all these other harassments
Yeah.
that also need to be tackled.
Basically, the whole idea is that of data driven solutions. So, an evidence based solution. So, inshallah, I mean, this method can be replicated, it can be scaled to other harassments as well. But
Mm.
as Hayat said, we are introducing that idea of, if you want to solve a social problem, you can go this way as well. So
Exactly.
inshallah, once we are able to, succeed in perfecting this, inshallah, we definitely would like to, increase our.
No, to increase your range, and definitely
Yeah.
that's this strategic way to do it is to address one part of the problem, fix it, get it perfect, get it right, and then address others. And obviously, each one of these problems, these are all nuanced problems. So to even the fact that some, as you can see from the maps, major cities like Karachi are going to have a much higher incident of of people filling out the form, and higher number of incidents as well compared to some of the rural areas. And that doesn't mean that the problem is different. It's or the problem, there aren't problems in that area. It's just that the nature of the problem might be different. And I'd like to ask you about that, like, um, when as you're unveiling these hotspots, what are some of the things that have come to, just in these short 2 months that you've gone live? What are some of the things that you have noticed that you'd like to highlight?
Okay. One thing which I also was surprised, I mean, since you talked about hotspots, the timing. Because generally we feel that, in our parts of the world, that evening time, night time, don't go at night. This is happening during daylight. I mean, we leave so many incidents happening, um, right when everybody is up, it's all crowded, it's happening. So this really, I think, surprised me, and I felt this was something. This says a lot. This says that it's not about whether you went out at 12 in the morning or at night.
Mm.
So this is something which I felt I should highlight.
And some of the things that sometimes that we hear a lot is that, what was she wearing? Right? It's a lot of that. Like,
Mhm.
and this is something that really bothers me because so I'd love to, I don't know if you're collecting any information, or you might have just seen people when they share their stories, anecdotal. So I'd love to get your comments from both of you on that.
Mhm.
This is actually the very first thing that people ask
Yes.
as soon as you discuss street harassment. And I don't think that they mean to be critical.
Mhm.
It's just that there is such a misunderstanding, baseline misunderstanding of the problem, that this tends to be the first thing that people think about. And this is especially true for men. Uh, so I am also very triggered when people assume that your clothes are somehow uh, one of the factors that harassment. So here's how I like to think about it. I don't think that in areas of harassment, that you mentioned that in Karachi is a major city, and even in Karachi, if you go to a more privileged area versus a less privileged area, just look at the statistics. Where do we find women more modestly dressed? Probably less privileged areas.
Mhm.
And where do we find more harassment? Also in the less privileged areas. So
Mm.
if there was any indication that your clothes are somehow reflective of the kind of harassment that you're going to face, it's not true. So my theory, and this is a guesstimate backed up by the researches that I've read, it's if harassment exists in a society, it's like a disease. It exists and you can catch the flu. However, harassers use some kind of method to mark you out, right? So you have to stand out. And as long as you stand out, you will be harassed. So you could be wearing more clothes than what is normal, and you will be harassed. And you could be wearing less clothes than what is the average modesty level of the community, and you will still be harassed. So it's not a matter of what you're wearing. It is a matter of standing out and being outlined by a harasser. Theoretically, just a thought experiment. Let's assume all the women in the entire society wear the same thing. Do you think we won't be harassed? Of course not, because the disease still exists. Harassers still exist. They will just pick you out through some other way. Also, I like to think of this problem in two ways. So when you're talking about street harassment, the kind of solutions that you suggest, they could be personal, things that you can do personally to protect yourself from street harassment. And then you talk about systematic changes. So what can an organization or a government do? So when we're talking about AGA, we're talking about systematic changes. What kind of innovations and ideas and even rules, laws can we bring into society that will stop harassment? So there is a place and there is a discussion around clothes, but it's a very private matter. And especially when you're discussing street harassment as a social issue, you should not be bringing in clothes. You really shouldn't. It's kind of like, small analogy, it's kind of like I talk to my son about being financially responsible and I tell him, you know what, you don't need to buy an expensive car, save up your money, for example. And then I go on a systematic level trying to solve the country's economy and I give the same the same solution. Everyone just needs to buy cheaper cars and save money and that's it. No, it's not. While that has a discussion and a place in a private setting of how you as a person can maybe protect yourself, no way can we include that in a systematic solution. And there's just no room for that discussion, in my opinion. Harassment is clearly and simply someone violating your right, violating your body, and someone who thinks that they have just the audacity to come into your personal space um, and harass you. That's what it's about. It's a power struggle. It's about uh, ego and control. It's really not about clothes.
Yeah. And one thing I would like to add, Sister Hina, uh, sister, okay. So, one thing I would like to add when you asked about our stories, I feel when we talk about clothes and street harassment, it makes the victim feel blamed. And I think this is a reason why in some of our stories we get this term. In Urdu, they say, I was wearing a chadar, you know, and then they tell their incident. So I think in their minds, it's already kind of registered that the first thing this person is going to think was maybe I was wearing the wrong kind of clothes. So this is like, we're trying to blame the victim for something. I mean, they are not, they shouldn't be blamed for. I mean, they should be supported, I mean, or consoled. So this is one thing. And then the second thing, which I personally think of this problem as, is is the harasser's character, I mean, is that person who is harassing you, is his character defined by the clothes the girl is wearing? So if he sees a girl in, covered clothes, he's a very good person. His character is, you know, the way it should be. And then as soon as he sees, okay, now this girl is inappropriately dressed, so I have a chance, and she is at fault because she was wrongly dressed. So why are we, why is there this confusion? I mean, nobody's character should be defined by what the other person was wearing. And it's just a very basic ethics and morals. We all would like to teach our children that it's not okay to make fun of someone, or harassment. I mean, coming to the levels of harassment we are reading stories about, I mean, that's just another level. But even making fun of someone on the streets is unacceptable, and clothes have nothing to do with it. You're muted, Sister Hina. You're muted. Yes.
I wanted to ask, what were some incidents that stood out to you specifically? Maybe because they were so either abnormal or so normalized in the society, that you feel like these are some of your case studies that can now be forwarded on to policymakers.
For me, what really stood out, I can't share the incidents
Mhm.
themselves because, privacy. But for me, what really stood out was how young the girls were and how severe the cases were. And
Mm.
um, they were with somebody. They weren't alone. They were with their parents. So the kind of story that you mentioned in the start, their fathers were right there next to them, or their brothers. This is a silent crime. And one of the reasons why harassers keep getting away with this is because there was a time not too long ago when women were shushed, were encouraged to be shush about it. Um, that's changing, and the change comes faster because no one around you, even your own, even your own blood relative standing right next to you, doesn't know what's going on, and it just happens. what
Exactly.
what really stood out to me was how young the girls were and how traumatized even till today that they still are. A lot of stories I've read said we've never told anyone. This is the first time we're even discussing this, or telling this, and the kind of trauma that that would play on you your
It
whole
does.
life.
It does.
It's it's heartbreaking. Like I said, I can't read the stories for too long. I need to take a break.
It is, and the fact is that when you look back at history, and lot of times, like Islam comes into it, people throw a lot of like heavy duty words around, and oh, your clothes are, Allah says in the Quran that if you're, wear this because it'll stop you from being harassed. So does that mean, we're wrong or the Quran is wrong, and all sorts of, I've heard the whole gamut. Um, and I just keep reflecting back on the incident in the time of, I believe it was Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu, when this woman was able to um, travel alone, through the countryside without being harassed, right? And the time when even one woman would be harassed, and the call would go out to the Khalifa, right? And so, so that's like, I'm thinking like, okay, well, you give us a society like that, and maybe then we'll come, so this is really, and that's why it's really, I think one of the things that I love about your project is that it's being run by women for women, because no one can understand what you go through until, unless you've been there, and that's a part, like how serious the problem is. So and this support system that you guys are talking about, and then you putting together, just knowing that it's not your fault, you didn't do anything wrong, and there are hundreds and thousands of other young people, other young women, who have gone through the exact same thing. that is just so, like, I remember, like, when even as a young girl, like talking to your friends and finally being able to confide, like suddenly your voices go shush down. And so yes, and there's a lot of like, and I love that about the society, that there is haya, there is that concept of haya, it hasn't gone away. But how is that is that used to crush women's voices? And that here you're flipping the script around on them, and you're saying, okay, we're going to give you that, a platform where you don't have to be public about it, but we're going to use your the data you provide us and come out with a public solution. So tell me more about some of the awareness work that you're doing, because I did see on the website that there was solution, some sort of advice to communities, advice to women. So share some more about that as well.
I quickly want to touch on the anonymity point that you just mentioned, because this was a very important part of designing the solution, that it really has to be completely anonymous, to the point that even if Mariam fills out a report, I won't know who filled
Mm.
it out. There's just no way for anyone to know whose report this is. And on top of that, I feel there is a sense of trust that is deeply rooted with the kind of work that we're doing, because it's not just a trust that people have with us, that okay, this person is not going to reveal my identity, I don't even know your identity, it's anonymous, but they're not going to disclose our stories, but also the trust that I am not giving up my story, I'm not revisiting my pain for nothing. They are going to do something about it. And we are committed to that. We are committed to honoring this trust and coming up with a solution, or at least I'm I like to call it, I'm going to give it my everything. I'm going to throw everything I have, all my resources, uh, all the education that I've had, and try to come up with a solution to honor this trust. You were talking about the awareness aspect. So, like I said, um, from our research online, we realized that around 10 years ago was the time when a lot of organizations started creating awareness campaigns for this topic. And we have built on their work. So we've gone back, visited those organizations, seen what did they do in the last 10 years and what has worked for them.
Mm.
And then we wanted to propagate their ideas and their research and really build on the foundation that has already been developed.
Okay.
We also see a lot of initiatives in Pakistan that focus on awareness. And our want is to collaborate with anyone who's working on this topic. So we reach out to them and we want to reshare the research that they've done or the models that they've perfected and adopt them and make Aga another a loudspeaker to reiterate all uh, the work that's already been put into street harassment and combating it. I liked how you mentioned in the start how you encourage your daughters to really raise their voice and
Mm.
kick and clap in public, because we need to teach our girls this, and we know this from research that, like Maria mentioned, this might not be the best solution in every area, but generally speaking, it is true, and research has backed this up, that when women raise their voice and when they try to address that harassment instead of staying quiet or running away from it, if nothing else, at least they feel like I did my best.
Mm.
And when she's silent, when you look, when we ask these questions, how do you feel about it now, most of them say we feel guilty, although they're the victim. They say we feel guilty, we should have said something, we should have done something, but for whatever reason, and I think the reason is that we aren't trained, we're not having this conversation. Because another statistic that we came up with was almost 75% of women, although this is so common, 75% of women were shocked and they said we don't know what to do, which means we're not having this conversation as often as we should be.
Yeah.
And that's where awareness comes in. That's where knowing that, God forbid this should happen to you, but statistics say that this probably, you will face this at some point, and you should be ready for it and you should be resilient about it. So that's where awareness comes in. And like you said, having a community to support you and realize that there are other people who have been through what you've been through and maybe even worse, when they come forward with their stories, and it doesn't even have to be public. You don't have to reveal who you are. Just knowing that other people have lived your reality and they have survived, and now there is a community to help you, I would say, develop that resilience that you need to face this as an issue.
Exactly. And
I would
people have
like
to
to add
understand that
something.
it's a power thing. It's not sexual harassment or street harassment is not about sex. This is something that I feel like a lot of times is missing in the discussions. It's a power dynamic. It's being able to control the, because let me share this stat with you that ever since the 90s, where when you have women in the workforce, increasingly, like this is statistics from the West, and women get into positions of power, sexual harassment cases by women towards men have doubled since the 1990s.
Oh,
So let that
that's
sink in.
interesting.
See? So it's not just about a gender thing, really. And maybe street harassment is a little bit different, but especially when you look at, but even then, when you're looking at it, some of these cases, the ones that I've heard or I've researched or interviewed young people, it's just even walking to the bus stop to get on a bus to go to university or go to, so you're not even in a space where you're just walking across, like you said, across the street to attend a class or buy a Coke or just normal everyday things, and for the world to be, so it's about power and control. Maria, you
Absolutely, it
were
is.
saying something.
Yes,
Go ahead.
actually, I just wanted to add because when we were talking about girls, when they say that they freeze and they just don't know how to react, a lot of times, interestingly, I mean, since we have communicated with both boys and girls on this topic on through our Facebook and social media, the boys tend to have this comment
Mhm.
and that it's the fault of the girl because she didn't react. She should have taken action.
Mm,
So why did she suffer? I mean, why did she tolerate this? And they use it as a way to attack the victim again.
mm,
So that and then again that age factor. I think we have to realize and take into consideration that when we say that girls should speak up, think about a 12-year-old, think about a 13-year-old, the trauma. I mean, when something like this happens with her, I mean, are we having the right kind of expectations from that age when a 30-year-old man is misbehaving or harassing a 13-year-old, a 12-year-old? Are we having the wrong expectations from such a young girl? I mean, so we have to think of all these things before suggesting one solution. That is where aga comes in. And then again, I mean, when we come to less privileged areas, we never know. But if we react, the harasser may get more aggressive and it
exactly.
might put you in a more dangerous situation. So that's why I feel this kind of research is really, really, I mean, important. And we, as part of AGA, are trying to, explain people that why is this so crucial? I mean,
Crucial.
we can't have one solution for everybody, for all age groups, for all demographics. No, it
Def-
doesn't work like that.
Definitely.
So, yeah.
And what you guys, and I want you to put that in context for the audience as well, because a lot of times people don't understand artificial intelligence. They don't understand what does that even mean? Where is technology coming in? Yes, I fill out this form. So explain that part in a little bit more detail for those who may not understand.
I want to go ahead.
Okay. Um,
You love
so
that
this is
part.
actually my favorite
Yes,
part, which is
yes,
why Mariam is
yes.
giving it
So
to
that's
me.
why.
So, like the audience, before I had studied artificial intelligence, it was like a black box to me. There's this magic box, data goes in, something happens. But now that I've actually studied it, it's just a very, very powerful tool that imitates intelligence. So, what we're doing specifically is that we are feeding all this data to the artificial intelligence model. And these models are, we're not creating the models, they have already been created, they're established.
Mhm.
And you feed all this information to the model learns from the data that you provide it, And once it's learned, it can start implementing what you taught it.
Mm.
And artificial intelligence on its own is actually not effective. You need artificial intelligence to be backed by big data.
Mm.
So let's say we have 50,000 reports from a city, right? And I'm assuming everyone's on board with the idea. People start reporting. We gather all this data, and that's all recent data. So it happened in the past few months. What the artificial intelligence model can do is take in all that data and learn all those um, uh, different, all that information can be processed by the model. And what the model can tell us, wait for it, it can predict where harassment will occur tomorrow. So I can
Mm.
actually tell you, this is the street, this is the day, and this is the time. And
Mm.
harassers are going to be here, and this crime will take place. So kind of like Born
That's giving
Identity,
me
but
that's giving me goosebumps. That's
that
so
is my
awesome.
favorite part.
Yeah.
This is not this is not a futuristic idea. It is
Mhm.
absolutely possible, and anyone who studied artificial intelligence will back me up on this. We can do it. We just need the data, and if
Mm.
the data is consistent enough, and there's research to support that it is, because harassers have, like all of us do, they have routines. So they usually have spots where
Mm.
they. This is a game for them, like you said. It's about power, and you can start predicting where harassment will happen. And once you have that kind of information and that kind of control, then the possibilities of how the possibilities of how we can tackle this problem, just it's like a world, a portal has opened up for us.
Mm.
And then organizations can get involved, authorities can get involved, like
Authorities.
Marine said, even people can get involved. But I
And
would
when you
prefer that.
publish this data at some point, or even as you're saying, because it gets updated on a real time basis, imagine just being able to take a snapshot of that and taking it to your local council or your local municipality or your local police station, and and empowering the people of that area to say, here, this is what's happening here, do something about it. So then it's not just even in like that, you guys, it's not, the onus is on, not on
Yeah.
you to now get this done. The people of the community can actually take it in their own hands and get something done about it.
That is what we're
So,
hoping that will happen.
yeah,
Because look,
exactly.
AGA is like one small piece in a very large machine, a very crucial piece, but still, we can't solve this entire problem on our own.
Mm.
We rely on research that's already been done. We rely on each and every individual to come and report on our website. And then we also rely on communities to take things and matter into their own hands. What we can do as AGA is tell you, identify exactly where the problem is. We can also tell you effective solutions. We can suggest solutions. And then it is upon the the communities, like you said, to take that information and actually bring change to our streets.
Mm.
Just want to add one more thing when we're talking about involving authorities. So just recently, there was an article out that in Islamabad, the police released an app for harassment and street harassment. It was, well, it's different than our app. It was also great. It was just that women have this app, and if they press a button on the app wherever they're being harassed, the police is supposed to show up
Mm.
and help them out, which is great. But and we as AGA can mm, really facilitate the growth of such an app and help these authorities,
Mm.
because even the authorities don't have unlimited resources, right?
Resources.
So if you have patrol cars, you have a few number of patrol cars, and then AGA can tell you, look, these are the areas at these times you need to be here. So it just really streamlines everything, and I think that is just so important.
Yeah.
Not I think, it is important.
It is
It's
important. Well,
important in solving any problem.
Well,
So
sisters, we're at the end of our hour, but it was an absolute delight to talk to both of you. I wish you guys the best of luck, and hopefully we can have, maybe in a year or so, come back and get updates from you all and see what else is happening and what the wonderful work that you're doing. Thank you so much to both of you. For our audience here, TV. We are absolutely delighted to have you guys on board and with us every day. Please do join us October 17th for Helping Tomorrow's Muslims Today. We really need to be working on education for young Muslims, and Sound Vision has been at the forefront of that in the United States and around the world with the Adams World app and now the Adams World Club and Adams World classes. So do join them. Thank you to all of you. Assalamu alaikum.